You're listening to the Jōrni Podcast. What if the very healing systems we trust are actually keeping us stuck? Stay tuned for a conversation that might change how you think about healing. Hi, I'm Petra Brunbauer, and with decades of experience with sadness, pain, anxiety, and stress, I finally figured out how to leave all that behind. And this podcast shows you how to break free permanently so you can reclaim your sanity and find the self-esteem and energy to go after the life you desire. With real talk about mental health, holistic healing, and the tough journey of coming out the other end. This is the Jōrni Podcast. Welcome to today's episode. Many of us know what it is like to work hard on ourselves and still feel disconnected or unsure why things are not improving. When we hear someone speak openly about dissociation, chronic stress, and the boundaries of talk-only approaches, it becomes easier to recognize parts of our own experience. Devin Scott, a national board-certified health and wellness coach and a licensed master social worker, helps people reconnect with their inner wisdom and move through life with greater authenticity. As the founder of Find Your Meaning, he blends body-based coaching, mindfulness, and psychological insight to support clients who feel disillusioned by traditional systems of healing. His work often draws people who have carried the weight of trauma or grown tired of playing the game of societal expectations and who are now searching for something deeper, more sustainable, and more whole. With training in social work, nutrition, somatic practices, and energy healing, Devin's approach reflects both rigor and breadth. He combines elements of psychotherapy, body work, and fitness with the grounding philosophies of Buddhism and yoga, without requiring clients to adopt a fixed belief system. His sessions emphasize integration, mind and body, science and spirituality, personal history, and present possibility. Let's meet Devin Scott. Hi, Devin. It's so great to have you on the podcast today. I've been looking forward to getting to chat with you because why our healing systems don't heal is a really fascinating topic to me. And I believe our listeners as well, because of course, this is one of the big themes that's going on in the world right now is that our healing systems are struggling. People are struggling. So I'm very glad you're here today to talk about that, and welcome to the podcast.
I'm so grateful that you have me on today. I'm excited to talk as well.
Yeah, my absolute pleasure. And especially on these really important topics that I feel we could probably do a couple episodes on this because it's such a big topic. But we'll see where you want to take this and what you want to share with our listeners. And for starters, would you like to actually share a little bit about yourself and your own story? Maybe let our listeners know the bits of your journey or the parts of that brought you here today, and also let them know what it is that you do today.
Okay, my name is Devin Scott. I'm based in Brooklyn in New York City, and I consider myself someone who does body-based transformation. It's a broad umbrella, but the main work I do, I call body wisdom coaching, which is a blend of mindfulness and somatics with a spiritual grounding, and psychological body work, which is a combination of hands-on body work, energy work, and somatic dialoguing, talk. And both of these things for me are about being really present in the moment and the richness of experience in the body, and just allowing that to unfold and to tell us why it's here, what it's doing, to not be running away from anything and just sit in it, find our meaning, find our truth, and realize why we chose this lifetime in the first place. I do a couple other things like breathwork sessions, and I run this transformative board game called Leela, which I just love. I also like to write blogs and post meditations. I started my career in education, and so I'm still very tied to the idea of skills development and education.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And it sounds like you actually have a lot of teaching to do about these really important things. Now, I'm curious, what brought you to these body-based approaches? And was there anything that happened in your life that kind of made you go, this might be something that might help or that I want to explore further. I feel that we often come to a point, especially as practitioners and as healers, where the things that we start practicing are often out of necessity because we are looking for answers and we are looking for things that might help. So how did your journey unfold?
I think, like a lot of people, I was looking to stop suffering. I think that's the nature of almost all spirituality or healing practice. In my mid-20s, I realized I was a severely dissociated person stumbling around. In a modern clinical lens, we might say it was CPTSD. I'm not a huge fan of pathology or diagnosis, but that one definitely fit the mold for me. And I was just looking for a way out. And I fell into meditation and yoga, which are beautiful for me. I fell into psychotherapy, which actually reinforced a lot of my worst habits. And some things just weren't working for me, but I just kept experimenting. I kept playing. And what I found was gorgeous people doing body work and energy work that brought me into my body, that took me from this place of extreme dissociation, of extreme detachment from my physical form, to like looking inwards. And that was the thing that started to transform me. And as I was doing this mindfulness, this yoga, this body work, this energy work, I kept being told by mentors and people I trusted that I should be doing this myself. And as a raging codependent, I just followed their advice to some extent. I think the bigger thing was I am a constant seeker for understanding, and I wanted to understand the mind. I wanted to understand the body in the same way I used to want to understand knowledge itself or education. I trained in mindfulness, I trained in yoga, I trained in massage and shiatsu and energy work. I'm licensed for psychotherapy, but I left it, which is the basis of the conversation we're having today. I felt structurally tied into a system that was complicit in the things that are harming people.
It's
And I'm still
interesting that you say that. Yeah. Interestingly enough, you're not the first guest to voice that and to share that. And I do feel that when we have experienced a lot of trauma or we are experiencing a lot of chronic stress, we do have that separation often between our mind and body. And a lot of the times, and myself included, I really only lived in my head for a very long period of time in my life. And this is part of why talk therapy didn't quite support me, because that was also all about the mind and about talking. And it missed out on a really big part of the rest of me, my body and my energy, which simply just wasn't addressed in this path. So it's very interesting that you point that out and share a little bit with us about your experience with that. And I feel that a lot of listeners might be able to relate to that and are worried at some point if therapy isn't reaching these deeper parts of me, or it just isn't really moving me forward in my suffering. Am I just really lost, or what is wrong with me? Because that's what I was thinking. I was in therapy for 10 years. At the end, I thought it was me. There was something wrong with me because it just wouldn't work. And what was your experience with that? And how did you come to these more body, somatic, and energetic approaches, realize that maybe those need to be part of the healing path?
Oh, I feel like I could babble forever, so I'm going to try to not. I think, like a lot of people in the West, I came from a very kind of colonial empiricist mindset that like I can understand things. If I put my mind to it, I can control them. And so when I first started doing meditation, it was from the skills development, I'm going to do it perspective. I can really get a grasp on my life. And I was at this 3-week Vipassana retreat and I had a Kundalini awakening. And at this point in my life, I didn't even know what this was. It was in a 3-day sleep deprivation thing. I was truly worried I had died. I lost control of my body. And it fractured this for me, the sense that I have an understanding of the world, that I can control it, that I may even ever be able to understand it. And something in that maybe took me off my course that I must heal, or that I have control of anything in the first place. And just it loaded me with this uncertainty that sits with me still, that I don't know what is good. I don't know what is normative. I have no concept of anything. And so I just maybe had to spend my whole life sitting in the confusion. And it was sitting in the confusion that I started to see somatics. Like in mindfulness, I was doing body tracking. I was doing this but I didn't know what it meant to move my body to sit with it. And the coach that I work with now, or a therapist, she blends like cranial sacral and theta healing and a few other things. And the first session I had with her, she had her hand and my pelvic floor muscles. And she was like, "What's here?" And I was like, "I don't know. I'm extremely detached from it. There's a full dissociation." And she said, "Do you mind if I share what I'm feeling?" And I was like, "Yeah." And she was like, "I'm just sensing something very dark here, like a very narcissistic, violent side of you. I feel like you've had a lot of violent lifetimes, and this part is really packed down, but it's here." In this moment, I felt more like violently seen than I've ever been in my life. I'm normally like a very manipulative person that I can be perceived as very nice. I can just get away with it. And this one person who saw this darkness in me, I was like, "Oh God." But it was so body based. And then we started working it from the pelvic floor muscles perspective. And I started feeling the energetic shifts of that narcissism, which held all of my confidence, starting to move into other areas of my fascia and doing this. And it allowed me to see that it's all different, but it's also all the same. It's all a system. And if I didn't think of the body as an integrated part of it that was storing knowledge, that can move the knowledge, then I would never be able to tap into the depth of my experience. And I think the great irony is like, I have been able to shift that part of me a lot or integrate it, but only because I wasn't fighting it. I was just witnessing it. And by witnessing that part, I saw, and that moment in this work with her really shook me. I like immediately took cranial sacral therapy with her. I signed up to do a 2-year degree in massage therapy. Like I immediately jumped on the bandwagon because I just saw when you start to put the pieces together, the pieces move together. But so it's a giant mystery, right? I just saw that it works. And I don't think we have emerging science on understanding it, but it's also art and it's spirituality. And you just witness things that are unexplainable or are like, I'll have my hand on a body and I think I'm talking to an ancestor spirit, but I don't know if I really am. All I know is this is what we're witnessing together. This is what we're co-creating and this is what we're sitting in. And we can see things move and transform and do it as a system if we're deeply sitting into all levels of ourselves.
Yeah. And you know what you're saying there is maybe part of that uncertainty too, of letting go of that control, because we don't often get answers to some of the things that we're going through. There might not be an answer, but we still have this lived experience that we're going through. We have these shared spaces that we create with our clients or our loved ones or our colleagues. And I feel that sometimes, whether we know something is true or not, or whether science can back it up or not, it's not as important maybe as how we feel when we go through that and what we take away from that and how it transforms us. And there have been many times in history when people thought something wasn't true simply because the science hadn't caught up to it yet. So we never really know what will come out the other end. But I do feel what you're saying about having these experiences, that's what really matters. And that's where our own healing and transformations really come from. And there's not really anyone else that can tell you how you must heal or how you must feel or how you must transform. This has to be your individual experience. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. It's definitely very interesting. And I feel that the body is this big, it's almost like a library where so many things are stored and you don't even know they're in there until you start exploring them. And sometimes the things that come up can be very dark. And sometimes that makes people afraid to go exploring because things will come up that they don't know how to work with. So how do you feel about that when that came up? Is that important to then work with a practitioner that can guide you through these spaces? Or I think you had a very experienced and supportive coach in that moment. What would you share with our listeners about that if there maybe is a bit of fear about starting that process or starting to explore those darker places that we have?
I think it is scary. The entire ego formation in some ways is to avoid looking at the parts of us that might be rejected by society. And the formation of a self-belief that all parts of us have value is not easy. And it's not intuitive necessarily because society will reject parts of us time and time again. And there's a reality to that. Shame has wisdom in the sense that it does know that there are parts of us that will lead to ostracization. And I think because of that, I don't think we can heal by ourselves. We can certainly do a lot of work by ourselves, and there's a necessity of work by ourselves. But part of allowing these things to move and shift is allowing someone to witness them and to make space for them, maybe even to see the beauty in them. Like that piece of me, that like narcissism, that I really squashed down abrasive confidence in myself. But what it did for me was keep myself off of speaking stages or from taking space in ways that really mattered to me, unless I was doing it quote unquote for someone else, and which is a very selfish motivation in its own right. Because someone else was witnessing for me, I was able to keep the space that like actually, if I'm going to have integrated energies, I need confidence. I need to be able to move this in a way. And if I am operating more from shame, it's just imbalanced, and I need to bring this other thing to balance. And the nature of the shadow side is it's not bad, but it's balancing, and it's usually balancing something we're moderate in. But it's very hard to look at that by ourselves. Sometimes we need someone to make the space, but there will also be people who identify as healers who harm us in the process when they reject these parts of us. And that is probably part of our journey too. But the power of someone making space for a part of ourselves that we are scared of, it has like unbound power to me. I think your question was, what if someone's scared? I would say go at a pace that you can feel like your body is resourced to do. Because if you go too far, too fast, you're self-sabotaging. And if you're working with someone, they're probably not going to see your darkest part and bring it up to you right away. And if they are, you shouldn't keep working with them. It's incremental work. It's titrated work. You go to the next step. You don't jump down the whole flight of stairs. And so it's always, what can my body tolerate today? How can I resource my body to take the next step without the air of perfectionism of I need to go down the whole flight today, or I need to do it in the next year. And it's just always, can I push a little bit more?
Yeah, that's beautifully said. And I feel that also builds back our mind-body connection, because if we do go too fast, a lot of people will abandon because they will say, oh, it didn't work. It just made me worse. So going at that pace that respects our nervous system, respects where we're at. And I guess there's a bit of an art in itself if you're a coach or a guide or a practitioner to tune into your client and really, if you're working with them, make sure it's at a pace for them. But if you're the person in the healing seat, to really tune into yourself also. But as you said, that might be difficult in the beginning. If you're very dissociated, you might not be able to tell what you can handle at the moment. So I think having an experienced and a very supportive person that works with you on that definitely has value in that as well, as you said, to do that together with someone. And what kind of transformations did you experience in this journey? I'm always curious because healing takes so many different shapes, so many different paths, and it's different for every single one of us. And what was your experience once you started healing that mind-body connection, once you started working with your body and you allowed yourself to come into these spaces and worked with that? What changed in your life? What was that, the things that you experienced that were an indication to you maybe of, yes, there's some healing there, or yes, I'm feeling better or more joy, or I'm more connected? How did that happen for you?
I feel like there are so many phases here. Maybe I'll start to say where I am today, and then I'll talk about phases that came before. I think what characterizes my transformation now, I've grown a little hesitant over the word healing in general now because it's gotten such an entrenched sense of being linearly pathed or having a clear endpoint. So I just track my current state. And I think what makes me feel like I've developed something important is that I just don't get lost in my stories in the ways I used to. If I am going through a week of depression, I like look around my apartment and I see the hallmarks of depression and I just know I'm in a mood. I think to myself, okay, something about my circumstance is no longer working for me and I'm being pushed to find new meaning or new approaches. And I don't find myself getting lost in the sadness or the hopelessness so much as just allowing it to sit there and thinking that it has a purpose and it will alchemize into something. That was certainly not how I thought I was healing in the first year. The first year was just like, oh, my nervous system is not as frantic. I am like deeper breathing, or, oh, I'm noticing I'm switching from mouth breathing to nose breathing, or my forward head posture is changing. There's certainly like at the beginning, I really had a symptoms reduction mindset, which I think because of the Western framework of psychotherapy, healing is often now taken from a perspective of symptoms reduction, which I think the transformation process is so much richer than symptoms reduction because sometimes things become worse. And part of my healing was becoming worse. Part of it was in the ways I had been immoderate, swinging into the opposite side of immoderation at points, like having a scream down knockout fight with my mom in a way that I never had. And I experienced this part of myself that was really uncomfortable, but as like actually really necessary. And I look back and I was like, oh, I really am glad I don't have that stage running through me. And there's been integration since, but part of my healing or my transformation was experimenting with the parts of myself that were deeply repressed and letting them out. And from a strict healing perspective, maybe that was actually me swinging into more immaturity in a socially normed perspective. But it was experimentation, it was integration, it was moving, it was releasing, and it was necessary. So it was been very non-linear, but I think there's that equanimity and there's increasing non-repression. And sometimes that means it's less physical pain in my body. When I started non-dissociating, I realized I was in chronic pain. But as I go through a month where I'm like, oh, everything is tight all the time. There's so much anxiety and it's meant to be here. And sometimes, like, having the courage to not repress and stop actually is really damaging to my body. I probably could take a less painful or less symptomatic approach by being a little more inauthentic or socially normative. But I think part of the transformation is having the austerity to step into truth, even when it creates discomfort, which maybe I wouldn't have done 7 years ago.
That's a really great point. Giving yourself permission to just be yourself. And that can be difficult sometimes. But as you said, it also creates a new kind of freedom for ourselves and an awareness. I feel that a lot of what you're saying and part of your journey was actually creating an awareness that wasn't there before, an awareness to be, an awareness to notice, to shift, to move backwards and forwards at times when you need to. And a part of creating that awareness, I think, is that healing journey, right? It's, as you said, not we're going from A to B and then it'll be done, but it's this lifelong thing of getting to know ourselves and getting to know what's in our mind, our body, and really finding that path that works for us. So a very different way of looking at healing than maybe if you go to the doctor's office or you go to therapy and there's like a goal that you want to achieve, or, okay, I want my knee to hurt less, or now I need to get rid of my headache. It's a very different approach that you're describing as more of a journey and a path than as a destination, as you said. Yeah, I find that very beautiful because it gives each of us permission to find what that means for us in our own way. And there's no cookie cutter thing. And as you said in the beginning, you're a little bit careful with labels and diagnoses and things like that, probably for that reason, because that gives us the freedom to actually just explore what we are and what we want to be. So I love that. I love looking at that. And do you still work with psychotherapy, or you completely work in somatics and energy work now, or how has that played out for you?
I work entirely in coaching, which is free form and body work. A lot of the work I do is essentially the work I did when it was called psychotherapy, but what I really came to see was that I wasn't practicing the true psychotherapy. I was subverting it in a way that was, frankly, at points maybe like illegal, in the sense I was maybe giving diagnoses to insurance I didn't really agree with. I was subverting the system in a way that might have even been anti like a certain ethics code. I just realized the system didn't fit me. So my work is essentially the same now, but I was always a little counterculture in that kind of my business is called Find Your Meaning. And what you're saying, it's like my whole approach is we have dual consciousness. There's no right answer. So the thing that makes life really meaningful is that we sit in our life and we ask, why did I choose to come into this existence? And we have a meaning. We make a meaning out of everything. And it's not the doing that creates us, it's the ability to sit in the richness of the full diversity of your body's experience and find a purpose in it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that meaning and purpose are two of those things that really When we want to talk about healing, I almost feel like these are at the forefront of our experiences, even though we might not quite realize that when we first start off. But our purpose and meaning really are the core. You see, when people lose their purpose or they lose their meaning, right, it does affect their mental health, their physical health, ripples through everything. I think those are two of the core things that we are maybe on this journey to find and rediscover or uncover as we're making our way, get older and discover more things about ourselves. And healing in that sense, as you said, you've been maybe a little bit disillusioned by the term healing, and absolutely. But in the general sense, maybe healing is just finding ourselves and finding a way to be well, and to feel joy again in alignment with our lives. Yeah, I like that. And I've heard a lot of psychotherapists who actually have switched to coaching because for exactly what you said. And maybe some psychotherapy just doesn't fit some humans because it is too rigid and too strict on what happens, and it doesn't maybe fit everyone's healing path. And that's all right. That's why there are many different practitioners and coaches and supports out there. Yeah, that sounds like something that you discovered for your own purpose and meaning, which probably also contributed to your healing path. And especially when we talk about trauma, because when we talk about complex PTSD and trauma and those kind of things, how does an approach such as what you're offering now or what you're working with now, how does it support people's recovery from trauma? I know that we're looking at this maybe a little bit differently than what people expect. Okay, but I had trauma, or maybe I was in an abusive relationship, or maybe this happened or that happened. I want to forget about those things and move on with life. So that's usually the kind of things. I want to get rid of that pain that I constantly have. How do you look at this now from a recovery perspective, since there's not really a destination? How do you work with trauma recovery and PTSD recovery and things like that?
Oh, I'm drawing a blank on the researcher. I might have to tell you later, but there's the woman researcher who had oh my gosh, she had the 3 phases of recovery for complex PTSD. And then they've added a 4th sense. And I do tend to think in this framework of the first thing is just grounding the body in safety, and then it's processing. And then it's post-traumatic integration. And I think of it like this. If a client is coming in, and most of my clients have developmental trauma, it depends what state the body is in and what the body needs then. And if someone is in early stages of this work, they're usually squirming and wanting to run away. And the first thing you do is just create a sense of safety in the body. That's usually the first transformation that's possible. It's not necessarily true for everyone, but as the rule of thumb I think of is that's when we start bringing in breath work. That's when we start bringing in mindful movement. That's when we bring in like small mindfulness practices, some self-compassion to repair the self relationship that was really damaged in complex PTSD, that nagging thought that I deserved all of this, because you can't reprocess anything until that sense that you brought it on yourself is fractured. That's usually what I thought. And then there's the reprocessing step, which is repairing the memory formation of it, coming back to integrated memory. And that helps just the system in terms of the brain repair or reform or leverage the plasticity of it. What I really love working in is the part after, which is, what were the gifts of this experience? If we allow the spiritual perspective that we came here to do something that will light us a fire, our adversity is the thing that gives us our superpowers. And that doesn't mean I'm like pro adversity or anything like that. I think it's karmic, it's unavoidable. And if we're going to face it, then we can learn from it, and we can be enriched by it, and we can use that in furtherance of our purpose. And I have never worked with anyone who didn't acquire some form of superpower. They might not think of it as a superpower because usually in the earlier stages, it's weaponized in some ways. It's seen as catastrophic. It's easily manipulated. But when the strength starts to return to the body, that experience has just transformed someone. They cannot live in the same way. They can't just put it behind them because it's in their core, it's in their body, it's shaken them. It is just a part of their karmic theater. And that is where like the finding your meaning for me is so powerful. One of the things I like don't love about pathology is that like CPTSD, GAD, any kind of the diagnoses, they're very descriptive. They say what's happening in the body right now, but they're also very easy to lock the body into its current formation. And for me, working with someone with developmental trauma, at all stages, I'm always thinking your body is perfectly adapted to your lived experience to this very moment to sustain your survival strategies. That doesn't mean it's the same body tomorrow. It doesn't mean it fits the symptomology tomorrow. Your biological formation will change. We can move it. You can move it. But the crux of who you are, that soul, that purpose, that gift, whatever it is, that will survive the transformation. That will go into your next biological adaptation and that will feed your purpose. So how has that been adjusted? What does it drive you to do now? What can you not run away from your whole life without being miserable because this happened to you? Cheryl Salzberg has that beautiful phrasing in The Art of Loving Kindness of whatever happens, we don't need to be grateful for it, but we need to take it as a given. This happened, now what? And it will transform us whether we do it consciously or not.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. I don't even want to say too much because you ended this so beautifully. I want to leave our listeners with that thought and with that feeling. And I just want to say, if our listeners are curious and they've listened to this conversation, they've listened to you, and maybe they have some things in their lives that they also want to work on, that they want to find a path and maybe find some of their healing as well, how can they connect with you? And how do you work with people now? And what kinds of things do you offer?
I have a website. It's findyourmeaning.coach. I would send anyone there. People who want to work with me, I can do virtual or in-person talk-based support. I call it talk with guided somatics. And then I have touch-based support, psychological bodywork. That's if you're in New York, I can put you on a table and combine them all together. But also, if anyone just enjoyed our conversation and wants to learn more, I have a newsletter at my site. I'll send out about once a month my kind of thoughts on the state of the world, things that I'm seeing a lot energetically, meditations, and I'm planning to launch some courses in the next few months. So that's where I will put them up, some free and short and some more extensive. My sense of purpose right now is to democratize what is good about therapy. And so my hope is to launch a program next year around like peer therapy. So that socialized nature of going through it with someone you're not paying and learning how to be there for each other in a real relationship that can persist the economies of therapy and democratizing it. So I'm hoping to launch that next year. Again, findyourmeaning.coach. There's a newsletter at the bottom.
Amazing. I love that. And I hope our listeners check that out. Sign up for your newsletter and get a share of some of those courses that you will be offering, because there are considerations, of course, when we talk about our healing journeys. One of them are always financial, and some of them are also a fit for us and whether it works or not. Absolutely offering different kind of paths, different kind of options, I think is what the world needs. Absolutely. And thank you for this beautiful work that you do. And thank you for sharing your journey with us today as well. And we, of course, will be linking to all of Devin's offerings in the show notes as well. So you can find the links there if you're looking for the website. And I'm assuming we'll probably also put some socials and things like that of yours up there so our listeners can link up with you. And I just want to thank you for being here today and sharing your journey and all this wisdom that you have gathered along this time and that you are now sharing with the world. I truly appreciate it. And thank you for joining me today.
I really appreciate you having me on. I enjoyed the conversation so much.
Amazing. I feel our listeners will really pick some nuggets out of this conversation here and there. They probably will see themselves in a lot of these things that we talked about, because each of us has things to deal with. Each of us has some kind of stress or trauma in our lives that eventually will come up in some kind of way in our adulthood, no matter when it happened. And then it's the question, well, what do we do? How do we deal with that? So thank you for shining your light. And I very much look forward to seeing what you start offering for your programs and your courses. And I wish you all the very best. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in today. Thank you, Devin, for being here. And take care, everyone. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to listen in. If you enjoy the Jōrni Podcast, please support us by subscribing, sharing on social media, and leaving us a review. We appreciate you. And you can find more of The Jōrni on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and our website, thejorni.com. Sending you love and courage, and see you next time.